to page 378. Make sure you get this too, okay?
All right.
We're talking today about schizophrenia. Perhaps the deepest psychological disorder. And it is consists of actually a multitude of symptoms and perhaps a multitude of disorders. So, schizophrenia has what's called positive symptoms and negative symptoms. Positive symptoms, when we say positive, we don't mean they're good, we mean they're extra things. A positive symptom is something extra that a schizophrenic have that most people don't have. So they're cognitive, emotional, behavioral excesses, too much of something. For example, hallucinations. A hallucination is something you're seeing extra that's not actually there. Bizarre delusions. A delusion is a story. Do you remember the guy that was interviewed on the Philip Zimbardo video I showed you, and he thought people were leaving things in phone booths? People had been following him; they were leaving things in phone booths. This is a delusion. This is a story that you've created that is not actually real. Incoherent speech. You can't understand what a schizophrenic is saying. They often are saying words that don't really go together to make any kind of coherent sentence. Inappropriate/disorganized behaviors. I remember seeing a guy in Washington, D.C. walking across the street, just doing this. He's walking. He probably had schizophrenia or something wrong with him. Sure, why
Maybe
he
he
was
was
doing
a street performance.
Inappropriate behaviors, disorganized. They're often very schizophrenics, often very disorganized. So these are extra things that you have if you have positive symptoms of schizophrenia. Let's look at the negative symptoms. Negative symptoms, we don't mean bad, we mean deficits. Things that aren't there that should be there in a normal person. Loss of motivation. Very often a schizophrenic, unmotivated. Emotional flatness. No emotions. Not happy, not sad. Are y'all having your own little class back there?
I'm schizophrenic.
Not funny here. Social withdrawal. A lot of schizophrenics don't want to, be involved in any social events, be involved with other people. They're often become kind of shut in. Slowed speech or no speech. So you can see how these are negative symptoms, things that aren't there, that are often there in a person who's considered to not have schizophrenia. Now, they're not really sure what causes schizophrenia. I have a show I'm going to... oh, by the way, there's a good movie about a schizophrenic who's kind of famous. It's called A Beautiful Mind. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Best Picture, 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture in 2001. So anyway, it's got Russell Crowe. It's about a math professor from MIT or somewhere, Harvard, somewhere, who was schizophrenic, and kind of talks about his life. And he's not a math professor; he's like a statistics or something like that. Anyway, it's about his life. It's really good. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember it being a really good movie. So if you want to look at that. So let's see if I go in order. First of all, there's a genetic vulnerability that a lot of people have. It can be in your genes that either you have schizophrenia or probably more likely are more prone to getting schizophrenia. And you can see if your identical twin has schizophrenia, you're almost 50% likely to have it. And if you're the child of two schizophrenic parents, you're almost 50% likely as well to get schizophrenia at some point in your life. So that is because it's present, because there's a relationship between parents and kids, because there's a relationship with identical twins, that means it's genetic. It's in the genes somehow. But it's not completely genetic. If it were completely genetic, then if your identical twin had it, then you'd have it. And so it's not completely genetic. Only 50% of identical twins get it. So it's about half genetic is what it looks like. And half something associated with your environment or something else. The risk of developing schizophrenia in one's lifetime increases as the genetic relatedness with a diagnosed schizophrenic increases. So if there's some schizophrenia in your family, you're probably more likely to get it than the person without that. Yeah.
Real quick, it says child of one parent, schizophrenic parent, and then a sibling.
Child of one schizophrenic parent, that's if let's say your dad has it.
Okay.
Sibling, that's if your brother has it.
Wouldn't that mean one of your parents has or has?
Not necessarily. No, your brother can have it, but neither of your parents has it.
But your grandparents have it, maybe.
Not necessarily. It can come up without having a related person having it. But it's more likely to come up if a related person does have it. So it's not absolutely necessary that someone in your family has it for you to get it, but it makes it more likely, is what they're saying. There is a genetic predisposition. Does that make sense? So in the general population, if you don't have anyone that's related to you, it looks like there's only a 1% lifetime risk of developing schizophrenia. But 1% is still 1%. That's 1 out of 100. That's 4 people from this school will get it at some point in their life, even if they aren't related to someone who has schizophrenia. So I had a former student who had schizophrenia, and this was about 15 years ago. It came up when he was in high school, and he he was a little bit strange. He was very smart, very, very intelligent. He had the highest score I've ever had on the AP Biology final exam. Still has it. He missed like 4 questions out of 120 multiple choice. Very smart. But he was a little bit, when you spoke to him, there was something off. He just kind of, I don't know, it's hard to say what it was. It just kind of was a little bit different socially. And one day he set a fire in my garbage can. He came up, the garbage can was over by the wall, and he went over to the garbage can and he dumped it. He had a lighter and he pulled the top off, dumped a bunch of lighter fluid in there, and then threw a match in there. And all of a sudden the trash can's on fire. He walked back to his desk and sat down.
Wait, he did that?
It was the only time I've ever gotten to use a fire extinguisher in my life. I was excited about that part. So, of course, he got suspended, got in a lot of trouble. I think that was like his 9th grade year. And then it got worse and worse, and he went to college and he killed himself. He lost the battle. So it's a serious disease.
And you found out he was schizophrenic?
He found out later that he was schizophrenic. Later, when he was in college, I guess. And it might have been after college that he killed himself. But it was shortly.
So what did y'all think he did that?
Well, he didn't know. I mean, he started going to psychiatrists and that sort of thing, and they didn't share it with everything that was happening with the teachers, so I don't really know what was going on. But he was definitely a troubled kid, and he ended up killing himself. So it's schizophrenia is a sad disease, and it's a kid that smart, what he could have done in his life.
And one more thing, I'm sorry if I missed this earlier, if you explained it. Schizophrenia can develop basically any way. It could just be out of the blue.
That's right.
Genetics
Could be.
What's the
or
average age
traumatic experience.
for realizing you have schizophrenia or developing it?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if it's more likely to develop at a young age or at an older age. I don't know.
It says in the book, where did it say, like mid or at the end of adolescence, early adulthood.
End of adolescence, early adulthood. So that's about when he developed it.
It got worse.
Yeah, it got worse. Got a lot worse. Here is, so often a person with schizophrenia has prenatal abnormalities, something wrong with them even as they're developing in their mother's womb. Here's one of the things that they've noticed. There's a problem with the brain. MRI scans show that a person with schizophrenia on the left is more likely than a healthy person on the right to have enlarged ventricles. A ventricle is an open space in the brain that holds fluid. And most people have ventricles. Everybody has ventricles, but usually that's the normal size of the ventricles there. And those are the size of the ventricles in a schizophrenic patient. And if the ventricles are that big, that means they're missing a lot of brain tissue. And whatever brain tissue was around there is not there, or has been squeezed over to the side, which is not a good thing either. So that's one thing that they've noticed, some differences in the brain. I don't know if that's the only difference in the brain, but I know that's one of them. So maybe that's a way to help. I don't know if every person who has schizophrenia has that.
Are you kidding me?
Is that it? That may have been it. Long chapter. Yep, that is it.